Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Bolt Report for another episode of Thunderstruck. My name is Michael Wax, and I am joined, as always, by my co host, Jake Ricker. Today, we have a very special guest with us. He was drafted by the Atlanta Thrashers 8th overall in the 2003 draft and was traded to the Tampa Bay Lightning in 2015. He played 350 of his 983 career games with the Bolts and is the 2020 Stanley Cup champion with your Lightning. Currently, he is the co host of the Block Party podcast, as well as the part time color commentator for Lightning Radio. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Braydon Coburn.
Well, thanks for that intro, Michael. That's pretty good. I like that. Good job. And that was a cool opening you guys have for your the Bowl Report. That's really cool.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. So, we in the intro we talked about how you were traded to the Lightning in 2015, coming over from the Flyers in exchange for Radko Gudas and a big package. What was your initial reaction to being dealt to Tampa?
Well, my initial reaction was I was devastated a little bit. I was a guy that was in Philly. I was bleeding orange, so to say. We had some teams there that were very tight, very close group of guys. But we were kind of having a tough year. We were a little bit outside the playoffs. I thought deep down that we were going to really give a good push to the end. But we had a new general manager in Ron Hextall who was looking for maybe a little bit of a rebuild and get some pieces, some assets together. So the trade was surprising to me at first. Being in Philadelphia with the media that they have there, you're always hearing rumors and there's always trade stuff that's been around. And that was going on for, I was there for 9 years. It was probably 5 years of my 9 years. You always heard some sort of rumor that was flying around in the media. So it kind of becomes a little bit of background noise for the most part. But at the end of the day, getting traded to Tampa Bay and then kind of getting over the initial shock of that trade was, one of the things that I was so happy about. And it's been such a positive move for my family. And when I got here and I got a chance to talk to Steve Yzerman, who traded for me, and Jeffrey Vinnick, who was one of the few owners that I've heard of that calls players when they get traded to teams, and just kind of welcoming the team and just the way the team brought me in. And then obviously being a part of that team that went to the finals that year in 2015 was a special group and a group that I'll definitely remember as a highlight of my career.
Well, you quickly got to work scoring in big moments once you got here in Tampa. I want to go to one specifically. When you scored in Game 7, what was the feeling of scoring in a scoreless Game 7 and getting the Lightning on the board?
Well, the Detroit Red Wings and that team, they had some pretty special players. They were kind of near, they had the Zetterbergs, the Datsuits. They had a bunch of young guys. They were a group that was stubborn, a really hard out, and a team that was giving us everything, like you mentioned. It was Game 7, and Mike Babcock was the coach there. They played a very tight system. And, we were, for the most part, a pretty young and inexperienced group. So getting over that hump of the Detroit Red Wings and that playoff series was huge for us. It was one of those things where you just kind of like, you got to grind it through, and we were able to grind it through. And lucky for me, I was able to put the puck on the net and it went in. So as a defenseman that doesn't score a whole ton of goals, it was a special moment for me.
So before the 2015 trade, you made the 2010 finals with Philly. You guys ended up losing to Chicago. When you came to Tampa first year, lost in 2015 to the Blackhawks. What's the thought process going into the offseason for someone that came so close but didn't end up closing it out?
Well, great question, Michael. The first thought was, man, I hate the Blackhawks. I was pretty it was pretty distraught, to think back and you have a chance at the finals and you never know when you're going to get back there. So in 2010 to lose to Chicago, and then 2015, whole time I'm thinking, this is payback. We're going to get another one. And then to lose again to the same team, it's tough. And it's one of those feelings where you're just like sick to your stomach a little bit. But it also keeps the fire burning, and it makes you just want to work harder to get back there and just kind of do whatever you have to do to help your team get back into a position to ultimately accomplish the goal.
Well, unfortunately, things continue to have the struggles with the 2019 sweep. It was probably one of the lowest points for the fan base. I remember it very vividly. But after the years and years of success for you specifically, when did you start to think things were turning in the wrong direction for the Lightning that year?
It was like getting hit in the head with a hammer, to be honest with you. The regular season for us was, it was pretty magical. Like everything we did, setting a record, NHL record for wins, points in that season was, everything just seemed like it was going the right way for us. Little did we know, or I guess, what we should have known was bad habits were sneaking into our game. And we were losing a little bit of the teeth of what we needed to do, especially to win in playoffs. Then when we got lined up against a very hungry, a very underdog mentality team in the Columbus Blue Jackets, they were able to capitalize on some of those deficiencies that have crept into our game. That being said, sometimes failure is a good thing, and that was probably a big wake up call. And I want to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, and if you talk to the other guys that played on the other on the cup winning teams, it was a pivotal point in this franchise, and just being able to buckle down and say, we got to change some things if we really want to be a championship caliber hockey club, and it was a big reason for the success after that point.
You mentioned the little details going from 2019 to 2020. What was the biggest thing as a team do you guys think that you were able to change that people might not have noticed?
Well, the big thing, and you guys probably noticed it because you guys followed the game quite closely, but it was just the emphasis on defense. We were a run and gun team. We weren't afraid to play pond hockey, and we would beat you. We would beat you through relying on world class goaltending, whether it was Ben Bishop or whether it was Andre Vasilevsky, and then kind of this out of this world power play when the guys would, we would just outscore teams. And end of the day, that is great, and it's a good thing to have, and it's an exciting team to watch. But playoffs roll around, it's not exactly the recipe that wins. And we had to figure that out, and we had to figure out what was going to win for us in the playoffs. And we needed to play that way on a more consistent basis in the regular season.
So you guys make those changes, and then you go on a great run in 2020. You make it into the postseason, but you run into a little bit of a different adversity this time with being in the bubble. What was it like for you being in that kind of environment where you've got no fans, you're isolated away from everybody? Just take me through what that experience was like.
Sure. Well, COVID for everybody was just one of those things that was just so strange. It was one of those things that it just kind of came out of nowhere, and everyone was trying to adapt and be flexible. And the league was able to put this thing together, which is a testament to them. Really the planning and the coordination that had to go into place to get all these teams into Canada, which Canada's COVID restrictions were much tighter than the United States. And on a state to state basis, they were all over the place, depending on where you were in the country. And then to pull it off in Toronto and Edmonton, these two hubs. And then for us to get to Edmonton for the conference final and the finals was a feat amongst itself. But as far as the group, we were pretty motivated. We knew we had a great team. We knew that with a reset and the way that we had kind of been through some adversity before, that this was something we could deal with. And the coaching staff did a good job of keeping guys prepared. And when we got to the bubble, we felt like we were really kind of hitting our form. And there was, it's not easy, but to honestly looking back at it, people say, well, that was so tough, must have been tough. We had each other, and we leaned on each other a lot consistently. And there was some really cool moments. I remember sitting in bed one night and thinking like, man, I would not have been this close to some of my teammates and guys that I'd played with for a long time if we hadn't been in that environment together. And it kind of grew our bond stronger, which was really cool. And considering that we won a championship together in the bubble, with all that going on, it definitely was. It kind of really made that moment even more special for the group.
What was the activity of choice in the bubble?
Oh, we would love. We had a team room, so we'd go into the team room, and there would be games on every night, whether other teams were playing, and whether it was the Western Conference or in there in Toronto. So we would watch the games. We would sit around. We would talk about who we saw playing, and then we'd also play cards. There was a lot of card games being played. Some guys were gamers, and they would play, on the big TV we had in the team room, but me personally, I was a card game player. I played a lot of cards and had a lot of fun with the guys. It was it was like like Thanksgiving when you get together with your family and you're playing cards and everyone's laughing and joking and all that kind of stuff. I felt like that was like a nightly basis for us.
That's awesome. And then going to, back onto the ice as well, the no fans part of it. How was that different of an experience for you not having fans during those games?
Very strange at first. It was one of those things where all of a sudden, for the first time, you're used to kind of hearing all this different noise and the crowd noise. And now you can hear everyone crystal clear. You can hear the other team's coach yelling at his players. You can hear the referee screaming at someone else from across the ice, which you normally wouldn't hear that stuff. It's guys would have to be pretty tight just because of all the different auxiliary noises going on in the building. And I remember actually one time like hearing, I think it was I can't remember what team it was, but there was like a general manager in the box and he was screaming at the ref and I could hear him almost like clear as day. And I thought that was just so bizarre. It felt like, a throwback to when you're playing minor hockey. But it's one of those things you just, as a player, you adjust and you kind of get used to it. And by the end, I think the guys would agree that, it was just kind of felt normal. And then the following season, when the fans were back in the building, it was almost like an adjustment period again. You had to get used to having people and having that noise back in the building.
So we've talked about some of the times where you came close, but didn't ultimately, get the glory of the cup. But in 2020, what was that the most memorable part of you guys winning that cup, even in the bubble environment?
I think there's a lot of times when people will talk about, whether it was a celebration afterwards or the time spent in the dressing room or that moment on the ice. And I think all those things are special and they have a fine place. But for me, honestly, and I think I know it's cliche, but it's the journey up until that point. So it was going through the different rounds. It was kind of the anticipation of what the bubble was going to look like and the way we practiced in that whole environment and the way we prepared between games and the way you go into the room afterwards and you're just played Columbus and guys look like there's like a 4 or 5 overtime game and guys have been through a war. It's those are the moments that I will like hold dearly and really find for me is the highlight of that whole run was just kind of what it took to get there.
Not to go back a little bit here, but the Columbus game you mentioned with the all those overtimes and the war of attrition that it was. What was it like for you going through a game like that where you're playing for just so long and so much hockey?
It was a lot, but thank God for Braden Point. That's all I got to say. He was the hero of the night there, and it got us over that Columbus Blue Jackets hump, and it looked like they had a little bit of confidence that they could beat us, and because they had beat us before, so it was good to put an L on them.
So with that bubble playoffs, it was the only playoffs during your tenure with the Lightning where you guys didn't face a game seven. What was the opponent that really gave you guys the most trouble?
Hmm, that's a great question. And actually, I forgot that we didn't play any game sevens in that bubble run, but there was kind of different things. I think the Islanders series was tough. They always played us tough. They're a team that has a lot of really lockdown defensive players. They play very disciplined and within their system. So they're a group that's a tough out. But honestly, I don't know if there's one series that you can kind of pinpoint and say that was tougher than the others. They were all had a unique challenge and very good teams on the way to the hardest trophy to win in sports.
last time our last interview, we talked with Tom Mulligan, the head athletic trainer, and we asked him about that Steven Stamkos injury and him coming back and scoring that huge goal. And you got to see that from right on there on the bench. What was that like for you as a player watching Stamkos score that goal?
Well, Stammer had been battling, and everybody in our dressing room had known it. He'd been really fighting that injury, and he'd been, on the treatment table and doing everything under his power to make sure that he could get back on the ice. And I had a good view of it from the from the dressing room when I was watching. I wasn't even on the bench, but I was just so happy for him. Just the fact that he was able to out there contribute. Obviously, once he scored that goal, and it looked like he completely tore his. I think it was his groin off the bone or whatever it was. The injury was. There was a real concern for him, but little. That's just kind of sometimes what leadership does, and he definitely motivated guys. And when you see your captain laying it out like that, it's a powerful moment.
So even with COVID in effect, the Lightning had kind of a twist on Stanley Cup celebrations. What did you think of the boat parade?
I thought it was ingenious. I thought it was a wonderful idea. I'd never even heard of that. I don't know if any other teams had done that in the past. Maybe you guys know, but it was pretty fun. It was special for us to come home and see our family, and for the kids to be on the parade. And then the turnout was absolutely incredible. It was really cool. I don't know how many beers I drank, but lost count after about the first hour. But I think me and Curtis McElhaney and our families were on a boat together, and we had a fantastic time.
Is one of my favorite things from those runs, and I'm glad they've continued to do those boat parades. I think they were a ton of fun, especially from the fans' perspective. But when you get to Tampa, you were one of the older, more experienced guys on the roster, and certainly on the defensive side. Who was the young defender that was most willing to listen to you during your Bolts years?
Well, there's a couple different phases, I guess. When I first got there, a young guy that was figuring out his game was Andre Schuster. He was very eager to improve, and I felt like we had big guys, lanky guys playing a similar position, and he's just a fantastic guy. So we clicked right away. And then a little bit later on, when Sergey was traded for and came in, we were paired together quite a bit that year. It was, a kid that you could just see was blossoming with potential and talent, and to be able to take him under my wing a little bit was very cool. Just to kind of talk the game with him and see what he could do and his offensive flair that he had, and then just working that partnership. And I think sometimes as defensemen, that's just a special thing. I would remember the partners I had the best connection with, and Sergey's one of those guys, and I've just been so happy to see the success that he's had, and the way he's grown into his role. And sometimes it's easy to forget how young he still is, because he's been playing in the league since he was 19 years old. And I firmly believe that Sergey's best years are still to come here.
Yeah, we talk all the time on our show about, tempering expectations for Sergachev. He's been in the league a long time. He has all this experience. He's still only like 25, 26 years old.
My age.
Meanwhile,
Crazy.
a guy like Nick Perbix, who debuted last year, is the same age. Like, it's
Yeah,
amazing
perfect.
the type of
And Radish, you look at these
yeah.
guys, like, in age, they're older than Sergey, which is just kind of bizarre. But he's a guy that's been around the league now, and defense is one of those positions that the more experience you get, you see, and you understand how to defend. It's only that experience can only help your game.
How would you say, as far as you studying your own game and figuring out going further in your career, as the physical tools maybe start to decline a little bit with age, your mental game starts to increase. What would you say is the main thing that you're looking for mentally continuing in your career?
Well, I remember thinking later on in my career in the second half of it that I wish that my mind would have felt the same way that my body had felt when I was younger. And I felt like at times I was playing a little bit of a rover role and kind of all over the ice and working twice as hard as I needed to. But I think that those things, it's a natural progression, and you're always trying to look for little keys to get better and improve your game. And those are kind of the hallmarks of getting an older player, and just being able to try to stay healthy and enjoy the game as long as you can.
Now, you had over 1,100 blocked shots in your career, and I know those pucks don't feel good, especially if they miss that padding. What was the body feeling like after all of those block shots that you had?
Block shots, what the bones heal. It was more the wear and tear on the hips. The skating eventually kind of caught up with me, and that was the part that was the hardest part to let go. Is that mentally you feel great, and well, everything in my body felt pretty good. It was just skating's kind of an unnatural position to be in all the time, and it ended up just kind of wearing the tread off the tires, I guess.
So retiring a year after the trade to Ottawa and then the subsequent trade to New York, did the prospects of hitting 1,000 games ever factor into your decision?
I was always going to just try to play as long as I could, and do what was right for my family and my kids and for myself personally. So, all those numbers are great, but at the end of the day, you only get so much time with your family, and that was kind of ultimately um, the biggest factor in my decision.
Well, now you're currently in your second season with Lightning Radio. What was the most difficult thing from transitioning from watching and reacting as a player to now watching and reacting as a commentator?
Saying the same words over and over again. I would, the finding ways to describe the same thing in different using different words. And I found that sometimes when I would study myself, I would go back and I would get in a rut of kind of describing one play, the one using one word all the time, and it just became repetitive. And being able to go back and study yourself just like you would as a player studying your game, I was able to kind of go back and look at it. And then, to be honest with you, I had some people, Steve Versnick, who's a producer of and with Lighting Radio, and Dave Mishkin, and then being able to talk to Phil Esposito and pick those guys' brain, and Brian Emblom, and all the people involved with the team. They've been very helpful, and those guys have been really helping me grow as an analyst and as a newly minted member of the media.
Being in that broadcast booth, sometimes I know you're filling in for someone like Phil Esposito, who, you know, Lightning fans owe everything to Esposito with him founding the team and really getting this franchise off the ground. But you know, as far as his relationship with Dave Mishkin, how would you say your color commentary style differs with you, especially in conjunction with Mish?
Just well, me and Espo, I think Espo's a Hall of Famer. He's a guy that's obviously accomplished everything there is to accomplish in the game. But he did come from a different era, so he sees the game a little bit differently than I saw it. And forwards and defensemen, for whatever reason, we see the game a different way as well. So he sees the game through the lens of a forward. I see the game through a lens of a defenseman. And he's got a great relationship with Mish, and just the way they are able to interject and talk over each other. It's obvious they have great chemistry. And it's one of those things that I'm still trying to develop with Mish. The more reps I get, and being able to develop that chemistry.
All right, Braydon. So one of the things we've been doing with all of our guests is called the Bolt Reports Lightning Minute. We're just going to go through a couple of quick questions, some fun questions so fans can kind of get to know you. Are you ready to go?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. So first one, favorite sporting event ever attended as a fan?
Ooh, college football at Raymond James. It was Alabama and Clemson.
That's a good one. Favorite road arena?
Montreal.
Montreal. Okay. I think we had someone else. I think it was Tom Mulligan who said that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Favorite off day hobby?
Favorite off-day hobby? Probably golf.
The player with the most painful shot to block.
Ooh, Zdeno Chara.
That doesn't surprise me. Best trash talker.
Best trash talker. Man, there's a couple guys. Probably back in the day, I would say a guy like Sean Avery. He was pretty creative with his trash talking, and he seems like he's continued that trend into retirement.
Most jaw-dropping play that you've seen.
Probably the Kucherov deflecting the pass over, it was in the playoffs. I would say Kucherov's got all top 10 of the jaw-dropping plays I've ever seen. He's right there. Was a special guy.
He is a magician for sure. Hardest fight.
Hardest fight. I would say, I think it was early on in my career, I fought Olin Nolan. He was a big guy. He was kind of a bear of a person, of a man. And I found like he was I've just felt like he was just a tough guy to handle.
And last one, favorite block party interview.
All of them. I honestly, and that's the honest truth, is that there's always different people and you learn things about different guys. We had just recently on Tyler Mott, and I didn't know Tyler at all. And you leave that interview with just an appreciation for them giving us the time and letting us kind of get a little bit of an introspective view of how he was growing up and his family life and the things they care about, whether it's mental health or awareness of whatever their cause is. It's there. We've a lot of special guests, and I'm thankful I get to do that.
Well, guys, that'll do it for this one. Huge thanks to Braydon Coburn for coming on the show. If you like this video, make sure you hit like and subscribe. Don't forget to also follow us on Twitter or X or whatever you decide to call it, at BoltReport_TB. If you're looking to follow Braydon, he is once again on the Block Party podcast with Greg Wolf, as well as Lightning Radio on occasions. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you like the future videos we put out as well, and we'll talk to you in the next one. Go Bolts!